Welcome into the PHNX Sun Devils show, brought to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, America's top-rated sportsbook. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Anthony Totri, joined for this emergency podcast with Shawn DePaz.
Yep.
Shawn, some big breaking news.
Big indeed.
Yes, Pete Thamel reporting that Antonio Pierce, defensive coordinator, once the number 2 guy at the Arizona State football program, is expected to resign with the ongoing NCAA investigation and pursue opportunities in the NFL. Just your initial reaction to the news.
Surprised it took this long. I'm surprised that he wasn't gone before Zach Hill.
Yeah.
I love how they throw in the pursue NFL opportunities as if he has a choice, like as if he's going to be able to get a job in college football right now. But I don't. It's like, what do we have to show for it? Like, they committed these. I mean, I have to imagine that they committed these violations now that everyone's leaving. And what do we have to show for it? Second place in the Pac-12 South. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, no, I didn't. I think this was a matter of time. I'm honestly surprised it took this long.
Yeah. So if you aren't familiar with the situation, ASU being investigated by the NCAA for recruiting. Violating recruiting rules, a handful of different things, whether it be meeting with recruits when they're not supposed to, seeing them again when they're not supposed to. A lot of it has to do with the time period in which ASU was recruiting. But again, Antonio Pierce, defensive coordinator, recruiting coordinator at ASU. That's the big thing, is you can't have these allegations. You can't have this ongoing investigation in terms of recruiting and it all be at the helm. You've got your lead guy.
Yeah.
Right. Your recruiting coordinator is the guy who is in charge of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think hurt him the most. And Shane said it too. I just got off the phone with him that, the expectation was that eventually Pierce would be gone when this investigation ensued. But it still feels a little surreal in the sense that just a couple years ago, like, Pierce was such a promising coach at ASU. Herm grooming him to be the next coach once he retired, or just be a head coach in general. So to have the fallout now of, like, within the last 3 weeks, ASU has lost a tight ends coach, a secondary coach, an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator, etc. And it still feels like we are just at the start of it all. The Herm train, B's commenting, the Herm train is in shambles right now. Make it stop, Shawn. Can you do that?
I don't know if anyone can stop this train. This train is got a full head of steam. That was my, like, honestly, my first thought when I heard this is like, okay, when's the Herm announcement come? Because I have because I think it was Shane that we were talking about this with. He said that, like, or maybe it was Saul, but this is the head of it was Saul. This is the head of the program.
Yeah.
You don't get away with something like this. It can't be everyone else's fault when you're in charge.
Yeah.
Like, at a certain point, he has to take blame. And I just feel like it's a matter of time before he goes, which that is going to be a whole other emergency podcast. And we can talk about what that means. But especially, like, in terms of Antonio Pierce, the director of recruiting is going to get in trouble for a recruiting violation.
Yeah.
The NCAA doesn't just willy-nilly initiate investigations. Like, there's obviously something going on, and it was obvious that he was gonna be a casualty in all of this. Like I said, I'm just surprised it took this long. Bees does have a great point. Brian Flores is available. I feel like he's
kind of in the middle of a lawsuit.
Struggle.
Right now.
He is in the middle of a lawsuit. He probably, like B said, not be getting an NFL job anytime soon. Could use a defensive coordinator / head coach if Herm does end up leaving. I would not complain if Brian Flores was that guy. But back to reality. This was just a matter of time. And I feel like you said, I feel like this is only the beginning. It's just going to get worse. And we still haven't even gotten the results of the investigation. Like, the investigation hasn't concluded. We don't know that anything has happened yet. And all of these guys are already leaving. So I have to imagine it's going to get worse.
Yeah. Again, if you're just joining us, breaking news out of Tempe that ASU's defensive coordinator Antonio Pierce is expected to resign and no longer be a part of the Sun Devil football program in his roles as defensive coordinator and recruiting coordinator. Something super tough about this all is it comes on National Signing Day. right? As if ASU's recruiting class wasn't already hurting enough. They lose their recruiting coordinator. And when the investigation kind of came out, like it was immediate as to the fallout. ASU today ranking the worst in the Pac-12 in terms of recruiting rankings, and then second worst rankings in all of the Power Five.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Shearston had a great point in the comments, like not even just the current recruits, but you think of the players that are on the team now that are going to want to leave. And you can't blame them. Like the whole program is getting upturned. And again, we don't know how this is going to affect Herm, but it would not be surprising that he loses his job or he decides to leave. So I feel like even not only in terms of the coaching turnover, but in terms of what this roster is going to look like, it's just only going to get worse. But yeah, coming on National Signing Day is pretty terrible. I think the reality of it is that this actual announcement probably won't change a whole lot, because I have to imagine that most recruits kind of saw this writing on the wall, and if they're here for other reasons, not necessarily the actual coaches in the building. Maybe they're here for Herm, and if he leaves, that changes things. But I think in terms of Antonio Pierce, these recruits were probably already saw this coming. I have to imagine there was a certain level of transparency with recruits in terms of what they should expect the coaching staff to look like. So it's just the timing of it is just terrible. But I think this is just a microcosm of the larger scheme, the larger picture. Just that this program's kind of a mess right now, and it clearly affected what happened in recruiting.
Yeah, 100%. And it still feels like this is just the beginning. And it felt like that after Hill. It still feels like that after Pierce. It feels like everyone is now just waiting for that final blow. Everyone is now just waiting, it feels like, for Herm to be next. It is a matter of time, it feels like, in terms of when everything is going to take place. Is that a decision that is made before the season? Is that a decision that is made before spring ball? Or do they wait till the entire investigation wraps up and then go from there? But at that point, you don't know where you're going to be at. Like, you may have completed all of spring ball, getting ready to prep for Camp T or the start of the season. And then what? Then you have to replace your head coach. There's so much still to be determined within this program. But again, if you're just joining us, the big breaking news is that Antonio Pierce, ASU's defensive coordinator, expected to resign from his position as DC and recruiting coordinator in Tempe. Obviously, nothing has been made official yet by the university that I have seen. And there's still going to be some time for a new defensive coordinator to be brought in. Do you think that Marvin Lewis is again elevated to that position?
It wouldn't surprise me, especially considering that, like, when you talk about recruits, any recruits that came, if they're here for defense, they probably knew that Marvin Lewis would be sticking around if Antonio Pierce didn't. That being said, I feel like they probably don't want to go back in that direction. Like, I feel like when you look at, like, on the offensive side of the ball, they brought in Brian Billick, who was clearly qualified to be an offensive coordinator at this level. When they chose not to, they chose to just kind of have him as that assistant to the head coach and now analyst or whatever. So it wouldn't surprise me if they went and tried to. I think they're going to try and go get somebody else, because they just want to bolster this coaching staff and maybe bring somebody that has somewhat of some name recognition, bring a little bit more credibility. But I wouldn't be surprised if they went back.
Yeah.
So it's just so much uncertainty. I did want to say though that, like, we're talking a lot about how this is going to affect the coaching. We don't know to the extent of which this is going to affect the actual program in terms of postseason bans, loss of scholarship, stuff like that. So all this coaching turnover is only one side of this die that is this whole train wreck.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're losing, like, the bowl bans don't even matter if you can't even get recruits to play.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, that's assuming you're able to be 500 and qualify for a bowl game.
Yeah.
Like, at this rate, with recruiting classes for Arizona State ranking among some of the worst nationally and the worst in the conference, you can't even expect to make a bowl game. Like, I feel like if the NCAA is going to punish ASU, they are going to it's got to be among scholarships. Like it has to be.
Yeah, no, you'd think, and I mean, yeah, you talked about that, like you have to get to bowls. Like Pac-12 South is only getting more difficult. Like, I mean, we talked about a little. Caleb Williams going to USC, like that team's getting better. University or that school down south, their recruiting is off the walls. Like they're getting a lot better. Yeah. And we talked to Mike Luke before the basketball game, and he said that like that football team, they're probably going to be on par. They're going to or get close to par with ASU. So the playing field for them is getting more difficult, and they just keep shooting themselves in the foot. So it's just a big, deep sigh.
Yeah. I mean, Kirsten said it. There can't really be an expectation that Marvin Lewis is going to want that job. Like,
yeah.
And I think that is almost, and then this is speculation on my part of, I have to assume that is why Brian Billick did not take the offensive coordinator position, because this investigation had to have come up in conversation.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah.
So, and remember, Billick was hired before Hill resigned.
Yep.
So there's got to be some sort of conversation among Herm, Ray. Again, all these guys known each other 20, 30, 40 years. It would be naive to think that there hasn't been a conversation of like, look, man, like, I love you. I'd love to step in that role. But the way the program is set right now, there's no way. Like, you look like a fool if you step in and you're the offensive coordinator of a school that is now going through this. Again, the investigation is ongoing. We have no idea what the NCAA is going to do to it. It's just really a giant mess, question mark, dumpster fire. Anything else that you could really think of that's the Arizona State football program as it sits today?
Yeah. I mean, Prince James in the chat mentioned something that I think is interesting, like in terms of Chris Claiborne getting promoted, linebacker coach. I mean, you talked about coaches not wanting to come into the situation. I feel like promoting someone from the inside, and like that's an actual promotion, not necessarily kind of like a lateral move that would be like moving Billick to offensive coordinator type thing, might be what they have to do. Because why if you're a coach, why do you want to step into this situation when you're not going to have your recruits? And it's not like you're stepping into the situation. Like, it'd be one thing if, like, okay, you know this is going on, but they've completely cleaned house, and now you have a new head coach, whole new staff, and you can kind of reapproach the recruiting that way. But if you're a recruiter coming to this situation, or you're a coordinator coming to the situation, why would you? But Herm's still here, and Herm is still kind of the root of the problem. Like, he's the head coach. This is his program. Why do you want to join the situation? So it would make sense for them to go after or to look at promoting someone like Claiborne. But yeah, this program is in shambles. The Herm train is in shambles, like B said. And I don't know why there's not a lot of incentive to hop on board this train when it is heading towards a cliff.
Yeah, I mean, the coaches, the players, we've seen it in recruiting. That's the reason ASU is getting the recruits that they are.
Yeah.
Is they're getting and I don't want to take anything away from the recruits a lot. I mean, if you're getting signed to a D1 college football program, you are good at football.
Yeah.
So not taking anything away from the recruits and the transfers, but they're coming here to play.
Yeah.
They, like, if I'm a recruit, and I asked Shane about this when Hill resigned, is if I'm sitting across from Herm or whoever is going to be recruiting for ASU for the next couple seasons, like, you can't have an expectation of you're going to win a national championship. Yeah, that's not the expectation.
That, and like, why would you trust Herm right now? Like, I don't know. I would just have a hard time trusting anyone in this program. But yeah, you're not coming here. I don't think you can come here even with the expectation of like being in a Pac-12 championship game anymore. Because like last year, you could make that pitch a very realistic pitch. Like, hey,
especially mid-season.
Yeah, we're competing to win the Pac-12. And I mean, there was a point at the beginning of the year or midway through the year where it's like, hey, if they win these games, like, they're gonna have to be in the conversation for the college football playoff. And obviously, it did not turn out that way. But so like, you could make that pitch where like, we're gonna do some things.
Yeah.
Here now, you're like, maybe we can make the Cheez-It Bowl. Like, maybe we can.
You can make a bowl game. Period.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Maybe you can make some low tier bowl game. But it's tough. I mean, and like when you look at this team and like this upcoming season, I don't think this upcoming season is necessarily a complete lost cause, because a lot of this team is kind of figured out. Like, we've talked about the struggles in the receiving core, but like our running back like the running back room is already figured out. Jaden's still going to be our quarterback. There's still pieces on the defense that are going to be there. But when you look at the year after that, the years after that, it's going to be really hard to keep whatever momentum we had prior to this investigation, to keep that moving and not regress, and not start moving towards what U of A is at. I don't want to get that apocalyptic and think we're just going to be the worst the worst Power 5 team in the country. But
I mean, the future is set for that.
It's bleak for sure.
Like you figure, and I'd hate to be a negative Nancy, but like you figure that you are what you recruit at this day and age in college football. If all you have are transfers and a handful of guys, again, not taking anything away from those transfers or those handful of guys, but me specifically, I'm coming from covering Notre Dame, right? A school that is consistently in the college football playoff, a school that consistently wins. Recruiting, I was there for early signing day. They had 20 plus early signees. That's on early signing day. They have almost triple what ASU got in terms of signees and commits. Like that is how you do it. So in the middle of an investigation, you can't really go pitch culture. You can't really go pitch what you've got to these other teams.
Yeah.
Right. Where again, and I'm just taking it from my experience, is Notre Dame. Brian Kelly leaves a week and a half before early signing day. Marcus Freeman is in there, and it like nothing changes.
Yeah.
Like that is a winning program. So I feel like it starts with culture. And I think that's what a lot of people wanted when Herm got here.
Yeah.
Was, hey, Herm's going to come in here. He's going to be a player's coach. He's going to change the way things are done. And unfortunately, he's changed the way things are done in the wrong way because they're breaking rules, allegedly.
Yeah. And I was actually just thinking about what Kirsten said, just like it didn't affect the Arizona Hoops program. The thing about the Arizona Hoops program is that they were good. Like they won. They won before the investigation and they hung on to their coach. I think in terms of this program, they did not live up to the expectations of what this season was supposed to be. They had hopes of winning the Pac-12 South, of playing in the Pac-12 championship, and they didn't do that. So I think this program kind of was already moving away from what they were hoping it was going to be, and now all of this is just gonna accelerate that decline. I am at this point of Herm needs to leave. I think Herm needs to go, and they need to bring in a Jed Fish that can just be like, look, we know what this program was. I'm here. I'm changing that. Just rebuild all of this from the ground up kind of thing. Because look at U of A was the worst team in the Power 5 last year. And now their recruiting class is amazing. And it's because of Jed Fish. He had one season where he didn't, it was leftovers from the old regime, and he just kind of had to deal with that. But now he's here getting his own recruits, and they're moving towards the future. They're getting better. And that's what I feel like ASU football has to do, is they kind of have to they have to start from scratch, because I don't think you're getting better with Herm, because like I said, how are you going to, especially if you're a parent, if you're a mom or dad of one of these recruits and Herm is sitting in your living room, how are you going to trust him with your kid's future? Yeah. I don't think you can.
What's the pitch?
I don't know how you have one. At this point, I don't know how Herm has one.
And like going back to Kirsten's comment, U of A cheated and it won.
Yeah.
They cheated and they were winning while they're cheating. Cheating is never good.
No.
Breaking the rules is never good. But if you're going to break the rules, if you're going to cheat,
you gotta win.
you might as well be at the top. And they're not. That wasn't even the case.
No. And I mean, you look at ASU's football team when they got on national stages and they got a chance to prove themselves, they choked it away. That's not what U of A did. U of A, I mean, obviously they weren't national champions, but they were a solid program. I don't remember who said it, but like in the comments, they had ASU or U of A has a legacy of greatness in that basketball program. Yeah. Bees, they have a legacy of greatness. ASU football does not have that right now. They can't rely on that. So that's why I think they have to go the Jed Fish route and rebuild from the ground up. Any
final thoughts on the expectation that Antonio Pierce will resign from his position?
No. I mean, it's just like I said, it was a matter of time, and it's the beginning of it's just the start of the beginning of the end. Like it's
very apocalyptic here.
I mean, it's in terms of this coaching staff and like this investigation. I don't think we're really at the peak of it. Like we were talking about this move happening months ago.
Yeah.
Like it seemed inevitable that this was coming. So I don't think in terms of the actual, like, in this move in a vacuum, whatever. It was a matter of time, but it's just a sign of things when you put this in conjunction with the Zach Hill resignation and all the other things that happened recently. It just is a clear sign of what's happening with this program.
Yeah. And to end things on kind of a positive note, if you're an ASU fan, I think you carry forward with the thought process of like, okay, we are moving past this.
Yeah.
Right. Like we're not trying to hide it anymore. We're not trying to keep people in the dark. Like, look, a part of the problem gone.
Yeah.
A part of the problem gone, no matter their position. Now we'll see what happens again with Herm. But as far as today, Wednesday, February 2nd, Antonio Pierce expected to resign from his position as defensive coordinator, as recruiting coordinator. That does it for our emergency pod today. You can catch up with the PHNX Sun Devil squad tomorrow. We've got the USC ASU basketball postgame show. That'll be a great postgame show. We've got a lot of new graphics, a lot of new segments, a lot of fun. But you can follow us on social at PHNX_Sun Devils. You can follow me on social at Anthony_Totri. Shawn, where can the peeps follow Lightskin D-Book?
At Shawn_DePaz. And before that game tomorrow, we did interview Bobby Hurley this morning.
We did.
Great interview. Talked about that program. And I know we're ending the show, but you want to talk about two programs that are struggling. Bobby is doing it right. Like they're struggling, but he clearly has a vision.
Yeah.
So check out that interview and then catch us, like Totri said, for the post game show tomorrow. It ought to be a lot of fun.
For now, peace.